For us, the amount of hours we run, you need something that's really easy to work on.
Yeah.
And like the inside, the barrel of this is all custom. And I think you'd have a hard time, like.
Parker Schnabel just pulled over $400 million in gold from a beat-up Trommel that everyone else forgot. And it all started with one tiny gold speck barely seen under dirt. This old machine, left to rot in the woods like junk, turned out to be packed with hidden gold, stuck deep in its cracks for years. Let us take you to the moment the ground split open, and what Parker found next will change everything you thought you knew about old machines. The rusted giant that ate gold for years. This wasn't the first time Parker Schnabel had seen old mining gear. He had been hunting for gold since he was a kid, and he knew what old machines looked like when they were done working. Most of the time, they were just junk, broken down and empty. But this one felt different. This one had a story to tell, and Parker wasn't the type to ignore that feeling. Something about the way it sat, tilted just a little, like someone had planned to come back and never did. It looked like it had been dropped there on purpose, not just forgotten. But what Parker didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the machine wasn't the only thing left behind. The machine was a trommel, a kind used to wash dirt and rocks to find gold. Back in the day, these things were built big. The bigger, the better. They needed to move tons of dirt fast, and speed was the name of the game. The faster you moved dirt, the more gold you could find.
Adjusted feed rate, adjusted water. It was a lot of fun, but definitely a challenge. Because you're like wide open material, wide open water.
Walk away.
But there was a catch. These giant machines weren't perfect. They missed things. Tiny gold pieces would slip through the screens, falling into cracks or getting stuck in spots where no one would think to look. Over time, those little bits could add up. If no one cleaned them out, they'd just sit there. Parker climbed up the side of the rusty drum. The surface was rough under his boots, covered in years of dirt, leaves, and whatever else the wind had blown in. His hands brushed away grime as he looked closer. At first, it seemed like a waste of time. Just another pile of metal, another broken machine in the woods. But then he saw it, a glimmer, just a little flash, a sparkle buried under the filth. Gold, real gold. Just a fleck, but enough to make his heart skip. He leaned in, looked closer, and there it was again. Another fleck, and another. The more he looked, the more he found. Inside that machine, hiding in corners and seams, were dozens of tiny gold bits. It was like the machine had been eating gold for years and never told anyone. The fine gold dust, the kind that slips through fingers, had built up.
Testing out those 2 plants that we did today was a good thing to do, but we need to make some decisions. Clock's ticking.
It clung to the inside like sugar stuck in a candy jar. Word got around fast. Experts were called in to take a look. After digging deeper and doing the math, they figured out that this old machine was holding on to a gold treasure worth more than $400 million. That kind of number isn't just big, it's massive. People work their whole lives and never see money like that. And it was just sitting there, covered in rust and dirt, out in the middle of the woods. When the crew finally got it moving, it was slow going. The ground was rough, full of rocks and roots. Sometimes the machine would tilt, and everyone would hold their breath. But bit by bit, they moved it. Each mile was a victory. Once they got it out, it was time to fix it. The machine had been sitting still for years. Parts were cracked, screens were ripped, gears were rusted. It wasn't just a little repair job. This was full-on surgery. The crew worked around the clock. They cleaned it out, replaced broken parts, and reinforced the drum to make sure it could spin without falling apart. It was like rebuilding a giant puzzle. And when it was ready, they fired it up. The sound was loud, deep, and full of power, like a sleeping monster waking up. The drum spun, the gears turned, and dirt began to flow. They fed it pay dirt, a mix of soil and rock from gold-rich ground, and watched as it worked. The gold came out slow at first, tiny bits, then chunks. The machine was working better than expected. Day after day, the team kept feeding it dirt, and day after day, more gold came out, clean, bright, and shiny. Parker watched it all with a grin. This wasn't just a lucky find. It was the kind of thing people dream about. A forgotten machine, loaded with treasure, waiting for the right person to bring it back to life. What made it even better was the story behind it. This wasn't just about gold, it was about finding something everyone else missed, seeing value where no one else looked. That old Trommel had been useless to most people, just junk in the woods. But to Parker, it was a gold factory waiting to start up again. The more they worked with the machine, the more they realized how well it was built. Back in the day, people made machines strong. This one had thick steel, solid bolts, and a design that could handle anything. Once it was cleaned and oiled, it ran like it had never stopped. Parker thought finding gold was the big win, but things were just getting started. Buried riches in the Trommel that refused to die. They kept track of how much gold it produced. Every day brought more. Soon they were filling jars, buckets, and bins. The numbers climbed higher. It wasn't just hundreds of ounces, it was thousands. The total kept rising, and people started to talk. Other miners came to see it, amazed by how much had been hiding in plain sight. But Parker didn't let it get to his head. He stayed focused. Every piece of gold was a reminder of the work they'd done, the risks they'd taken. The machine that everyone thought was worthless had turned into one of the best finds in years. He thought back to the first moment he saw the sparkle. Just a speck. That tiny flash had led to all this. It showed him that sometimes the biggest rewards come from the smallest signs. You just have to know where to look. There's more to tell, and this is only the start. The real story isn't just about the gold. It's about the grind, the hustle, and the fire inside that makes you chase after something when everyone else turns away. That's what made this discovery different. That's what made it gold. It all started with a machine most folks would have just walked past. A Trommel, old and falling apart, sitting out in the middle of nowhere. Dirt and vines covered it, and it looked more like scrap than anything useful. No shine, no motion, nothing that screamed value. But one guy saw it different. The Trommel was half sunk into the ground, like the earth was trying to hide it. Some parts were gone, others barely hanging on. Looked like no one had touched it in decades. Still, something about it felt right.
That is Gold Run, which was a super rich creek, and where it dumped into Dominion, I'm guessing was, in this area right here.
He called in the crew and got to work. Things didn't kick off quick. Nothing does out in the bush. First, they had to clear thick brush, fight through mud, and haul off a mess of junk. Days passed before they could even get a good look. Then came the real work. Scraping, brushing, checking every inch. Most bolts were rusted tight. Some parts crumbled right off. Even with all the damage, he saw a chance. Dirt had built up around the Trommel, like the last crew just quit and walked away. Maybe they lost hope. Maybe something went bad. Either way, no one had touched it in years. So he made the call to test the dirt. Not just a peek, real testing. They brought out the pans and gave it a shot. First few scoops turned up something crazy. Gold. Not tiny bits either. Big stuff. Nuggets. The kind that gets your blood pumping. Every pan was better than the last. They couldn't believe it. That old forgotten ground was loaded, richer than most places they'd seen before. Like finding treasure in plain sight. The team kept at it. More pans, more tests, more shock. That dirt wasn't junk, it was gold-packed. Everything changed. They weren't just messing with an old machine now. They were in the middle of a real gold mine. Parker didn't wait. He set up a small processing station close by. Nothing fancy, just enough to start sorting and washing the dirt right away. Every bucket mattered. With this much gold in the ground, wasting even a tiny bit felt wrong. He made sure to bring in both new tech and old methods, a mix of tradition and progress. That way they could pull every last speck of gold from that soil. The Trommel itself needed love. It had been forgotten, but it still had life left. As the crew worked on it, they started learning more. Turns out this machine wasn't a one-off. It had been part of something bigger, a system that connected several mining spots. Old records, dusty and falling apart, showed a network of operations. This machine had helped move dirt from one rich site to another. It was like a gold highway, and this Trommel had been the toll gate. That discovery opened new doors. If this machine had been loaded with gold for all those years, what else was still out there? Parker studied the maps, tracing lines and old paths. It looked like the whole area had been used to transport pay dirt across several key spots. If one was full, the others might be too. Suddenly, it wasn't just about the Trommel anymore. It became a hunt through history. Every piece of rusted metal felt like a clue. The crew pushed harder. They cleaned, repaired, and rebuilt what they could. Not to make it shiny, but to make it strong again. They didn't want to change its story, just help it tell the rest. Working conditions were rough. Long days, cold mornings, and dirt that stuck to everything. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. Gold kept showing up, and the deeper they went, the more they found. The ground didn't want to let go of its secrets, but Parker and his team were digging them out one shovel at a time. This wasn't just a job anymore. It started to feel like they were honoring the past. The people who built this machine had poured everything into it, dreams, sweat, maybe even their last dollar. And now, decades later, Parker was picking up where they left off. Each panel on the Trommel told a story. Each bolt held memories of miners who had stood in the same spot, chasing the same dream. It was powerful. The machine wasn't just metal and gears. It was a connection to those who came before. They had no idea how much more gold was still waiting in the dirt. Gold in the rust. Then came the real reward. As the Trommel started running again, cleaned and working, the gold really poured in. Dirt rolled in one side and clean. Bright gold dropped out the other. It was steady, rich, and far beyond what anyone expected. Every run brought more. The crew could barely keep up. The containers started filling fast, and still the dirt around the area showed no signs of running dry. Parker walked the site daily, checking every step. He made sure the crew stayed focused, made sure nothing was missed. He knew this was something big, possibly the biggest haul he'd ever seen. It wasn't just the amount of gold, it was where it came from. A forgotten place, an abandoned machine, a chance others had ignored. Even as more gold came out, Parker stayed grounded. He didn't jump around or yell. He just kept working, kept digging. That's what he does. He knows gold doesn't come easy. You have to earn it. And out here in this hidden spot, they were earning every ounce. More records turned up as they cleaned. Maps, ledgers, notes scribbled by miners long gone. They pointed to even more sites, more spots where pay dirt had once been moved. Parker marked each one, planning his next steps. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. The Trommel kept spinning, the team kept feeding it, and the gold just kept coming.
All right, we got 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 150, 180, 190, 199.
Nugget after nugget, flake after flake. The place turned from a ghost zone into a full-blown operation. No one could believe how much had been left behind. By now, the crew had restored most of the machine. Some parts had to be built new, but they made sure it all matched the original style. They wanted the Trommel to feel like itself again, just stronger, better, ready for one more run. Every pile of dirt went through that machine. Every ounce of water used to wash it got filtered again and again. They missed nothing. Parker wasn't about to let anything slip away. Not this time. Over time, they built up a rhythm. Dig, wash, sort, collect. Day after day, night after night, the gold didn't slow down. It was almost like the ground had been waiting for someone to care again. And when Parker stood beside that massive, rusty machine, now cleaned, working, alive, he felt it. That quiet pride. Not loud, not flashy, just solid. They'd brought something back to life, and it had paid them back in gold. Out in the middle of nowhere, deep in some forgotten corner of an old mine, there sat this massive chunk of metal. Rust covered every inch, pieces were hanging off, and wooden beams nearby had already given up and collapsed. A bunch of busted tools were scattered around like the place had been frozen in time. Most folks wouldn't even glance at it twice. To them, it was just a tired old machine collecting dust and decay. But to Parker Schnabel, it looked like gold wrapped in rust. Parker had learned something over the years, a little trick that most miners missed. Old machines, especially the big ones, didn't always let go of the gold they were supposed to. Over time, tiny pieces of gold get stuck in the cracks and corners, hiding in all that leftover mud and grime. If that Trommel had ever run gold-rich dirt, then chances were good some of it was still trapped deep inside, just waiting. Not many people think that way, but Parker did. He wasn't about to walk past it like it was trash. This thing was massive. It wasn't just a little backyard machine. It was a monster. The kind that takes several trucks, big chains, and serious muscle just to get it to budge. It had been sitting there for who knows how long, far from roads, hidden by trees and dirt trails. No easy access, no simple way to move it. But Parker wasn't scared of big jobs. He was pumped. He saw what it could be, not what it looked like. The plan had to be airtight. They had to bring in heavy machines to even start the process. If anything shifted the wrong way, the whole machine could snap in half or sink deeper into the soft ground it was sitting on. This wasn't the kind of job where you just wing it. Every step needed to be thought out, measured, tested. It was risky but worth it. When the moving started, the crew had to clear out the brush, cut through thick growth, and build paths just to get close. Then came the lifting, the shifting, and the slow drag out of the pit. The machine groaned and creaked with every inch, like it was waking up after a 100-year nap. It took days just to get it somewhere solid, but they did it. Once it was parked in a safe spot, that's when the real fun began. The thing was beat up. Years of weather had chewed through the metal. Rust had made deep scars. Parts were missing. Bolts were loose or gone. The drum was barely holding on. A lot of folks would have said it wasn't worth the hassle, but Parker and his team didn't flinch. They were ready to bring it back, not just patch it up, but make it stronger. They stripped it down, cleaned it out, every bolt, every corner. Rust got blasted off. Broken parts were replaced with new, stronger ones. Weak spots got reinforced, but they didn't stop at fixing. They upgraded everything: new motors, better wiring, fresh hydraulics, stronger supports. They even gave it digital systems to help with tracking gold recovery. They were turning a dusty beast into a high-tech treasure hunter. They mixed old-school toughness with new-school smarts. That's how Parker liked it. He respected how machines used to be built: solid, heavy, meant to last. But he also loved speed, efficiency, and getting the most out of every run. This new version of the Trommel, it was going to be a whole different animal. It took weeks. Long days, cold mornings, and late nights. The crew pushed through every bit of it. Nobody complained. They all believed in the goal. When it was finally done, the machine didn't look like a relic anymore. It looked ready to eat dirt and spit out gold. They fired it up. The engine rumbled, the belts turned, and the giant drum started to spin. Dirt and rock poured in, and everything inside began to churn. Water blasted through the system, washing and sorting, looking for that sparkle. The first few pans showed promise. Then things got wild. But here's the question. Was it worth tearing up the land for a shot at gold? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you felt it, and subscribe for more.